You know, many of us can easily get lost in the ebb and flow of political speeches and distractions. And it seems as though political issues are more important now than ever. Joining me to talk about the political past in Alberta is former Cypress Medicine Hat MLA Drew Barnes. Drew, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Naveen, nice to be talking to you. Nice to be on Bridge City again.
Great to have you back. Now, you have a lot of political experience as well as a life in business. As you see the province moving along after the May election, what are your thoughts on the next steps for Alberta?
Well, the next steps for Albertans, I believe, needs to be more direct democracy. The Swiss people go to the polls 4 times a year to vote on referendums, to vote on ideas, to vote on laws, whether it's putting them in or taking them out. In my 11 years as MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, and I was so grateful to be one of the 87 paid to speak on behalf of Albertans, I've consistently heard how Albertans weren't happy with how fast the government was doing things or what they weren't doing or what they should be doing. We need more Albertans to step up and get involved. So much of the system is big and immovable, and it's hard. You know, effectiveness is not going to be easy, but that's what Albertans are telling me they'd still like to see. You know, Naveen, our taxes are sky high through the roof on everything. Income, property, carbon, GST. Secondly, the fair deal. People I talk to very, very much want to be a strong part of Canada, but they know that unless we get a fair deal from Ottawa, all of Canada won't be as strong as it can be, particularly Alberta. And then again, some direct democracy, more opportunities for local decision making, and for you to have control over your family, your children's education, those kind of things.
Now, one of the issues you've been passionate about is property rights for landowners. Can you talk about how property rights have changed or even possibly eroded over recent years here in our province?
Well, it's so disappointing. In 2012, one of the main reasons I got involved with the Wild Rose to be involved in provincial politics is because the Progressive Conservative Party at that time had a huge attack, a draconian attack on personal property rights. They actually put in Bill 36, 19, 24, and 50, where they could strip a title without access to courts and without access to compensation. And those bills have been barely modified in 11 years, in spite of the fact we're now in our second successive Conservative government. My last private member's bill was to change that and restore property rights for individuals and families, but it died on the order paper under the last Kenny and Smith government. So shows me the government really doesn't have any desire to make it happen. And why it's essential, Naveen, is how you create wealth and build prosperity is through following the rule of law and property rights. And certainly in Alberta society and Canadian society today, both are under attack.
And that definitely explains why property rights are so important. But what would you recommend to citizens that, you know, what can they do to maintain and maybe recover lost property rights?
Well, the main thing is through the Premier, through their MLA, and insist on it. Tell Premier Smith and your local MLA that you're expecting property rights to be enhanced. Well, first of all, restored, but also enhanced, where more and more Albertans have the opportunity to create wealth through owning property and take care of their neighborhoods and their families, and that you're going to hold the Premier accountable. If property rights aren't enhanced in the next 2 or 3 years, it's time to look for a different political alternative.
And then what can MLAs do to advocate for individuals' property rights then?
They have no one better than an MLA or a cabinet minister that has the ear of the Premier, whether it's in the legislature or a caucus or a cabinet meeting. They can absolutely insist on it, and they can pick up my private member's bill, which again just died on the order paper when the election happened in May, that was going to fully give Albertans access to courts and access to full and fair compensation if the Alberta government or a municipality went after somebody's covenant legal right attached to a title, and insist on following the rule of law, building and strengthening property rights so we all can be freer and more prosperous.
Now, I want to keep talking about MLAs for a bit because you were an MLA and you were always very engaged with us here at Bridge City News. So what guidance might you provide to both constituents and new MLAs?
Yeah, thank you for that. And number one is for the MLAs and the constituents, make sure the communication lines are wide open. Make sure you're having full discussions. And two things: you're telling the truth, you're saying what you really want, and you're being effective. Um, One of the biggest reasons I decided to step back from politics, for a while, is the fact that the effectiveness was next to it. It was very, very hard to be effective. It was so easy for cabinet ministers and premiers to set up a release valve or delay or not really pay attention to what people wanted. So put in some deadlines and some determining factors to hold people accountable, like the property rights. Today, tell Premier Smith that by such and such a date, probably 2 years from now, you want to see full property rights fully restored. And if they're not, start organizing for a political alternative. And then for the MLAs, number one is listen to your constituents. There are so many good people out there with so many good ideas. And I was always amazed at how many good ideas people would bring to me that I had never heard of or thought of. There's a wealth of knowledge and people that care out there. So my instructions to MLAs is constituents first, process and party second.
Because it sounds like effectiveness was a challenge for MLAs. And then you're also talking about the importance of listening to constituents. And it seems as though MLAs need to find this balance between listening to their constituents and towing the party line in order to keep their seat in Edmonton. So from your time in politics, you're saying that MLAs definitely need to prioritize what they learn from the constituents rather than being solidly connected to the ideology and the party line to solidify and unify the party, correct?
Correct, absolutely. Constituents first. The parties were elected on a certain set of principles, so everybody has a general understanding of what the parties believe in. But the constituents are who you're there for, and they're the ones that will make Alberta the freest and most prosperous place. But it's also, Naveen, why I'm working with a group of people right now to strengthen direct democracy for Albertans. Jason Kenney put in some laws where citizens' initiative referendums can happen, but he made the number of signatures needed on the petition to put in the referendum so onerous. He made the time frame so short, it'll never happen. It was just virtue signaling or some kind of release valve. We need the Alberta government to make it so. I would suggest if 25,000 of us sign a petition, we can put in a law or take out a law. In Switzerland, 8.4 million Swiss, if 50,000 of them sign a petition, they can actually do this. They also have referendums just in a general directional setting way for which they'd like to see the government do. If it's a constitutional change, then the barrier for the number of signatures is higher, and that probably makes sense. But the barriers that the UCP and Premier Kenney set up are far too onerous. It'll never happen. So I guess the whole idea of that is give your MLA a chance to represent you and deliver a free and prosperous Alberta, but you got to hold them accountable. And if they won't do it, direct democracy for Albertans so we can do it.
Because it almost seems like parties are united on for different reasons. Like it seems like more like of the left-leaning parties are united because they think alike, whereas more of the right-leaning parties, they unite because they think independently. Is that a challenge for right-leaning parties?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is, and potentially we're more independent and more issue based. But we also forget, though, that the large number of Albertans are family and fiscal and constitutional conservatives, and that's where we should focus. I mean, one of my big regrets is not completing the mission. And yeah, I had a lot of good victories. I helped lots of Albertans and constituents on the way. But when I was first elected in 2012, Danielle Smith and I stood beside each other, and Alison Redford was spending $42 billion a year. We thought that was way too much government, taxes way too high. Now Premier Smith in her first budget is spending $68 billion. I can't add those two things together. Healthcare was a prime example. Healthcare, the combination of Alberta Health Services and Alberta Health, who pays the doctors, next year is going to be over $26 billion. Seemed like whenever I was in committee in Edmonton, whenever we were questioning Alberta Health Services, the Alberta Health Minister would never be there, and vice versa. When we're questioning the Health Minister, Alberta Health Services wouldn't be there. It was a perfect wall of not being able to hold people accountable and get to the truth and the ideas and those kind of things. These are the things that Albertans have to insist on change, and MLAs and Premier has to deliver it. And if they do not, then we have to work for change and direct positive change with more direct democracy for Albertans, I think, is the way to go.
So what do parties need to do to provide more allowance for MLAs to advocate for their constituents?
Yeah, thank you. Free votes in the legislature, absolutely. They used to say that they like free votes, but if you were ever going to vote against them, you had to tell them why. It's very, very strong. So they need to make it truly free votes. If an MLA wants to stand up and do something on behalf of their constituents or vote a certain way, they need to let them. Secondly, we need way more private members' business in the Alberta legislature. We only do that, I think it's 3 hours on a Monday. A lot of those Mondays get canceled because of long weekends or the government plays with the schedule. In my 11 years, I only had 2 private members' bills. One was defeated on second reading. I tried to make FOIP more affordable for not-for-profits. The PCs way back in 2013 killed that on second reading. And my second one died on the order paper. So in 11 years, I should have at least had 11 chances to do something for my constituents. And I sort of got one. Anyway, so yeah, that's the second thing, more private members' business. And potentially we need some situations where in caucus, everybody can speak freely. Also, it's very, very tightly controlled what your question is about, what you talk about, what your speech is. We need to give MLAs more opportunity to ask and talk about what their constituents want them to talk about, not what the party wants them to talk about.
And you've been working on your political action committee. What are your plans for using this to engage people and advocate for the best for Albertans?
Thank you. Yeah, we've talked to a lot of Albertans that are really interested in doing this, and through things like political action committees, foundations. I look at how America's got some very, very active organizations like Prager University, or it's called PragerU now, or the Hoover Institute. Those are the things that we're looking at, we're pursuing, we're talking to people about, and it's been pretty exciting so far. At the end of the day, we need Albertans to understand what's achievable, and it's our province, it's our system. So much is achievable. And then secondly, at some point, we're going to need the political power. We're going to need the seats, people in the legislature that will make this happen. That's on the back of our minds too.
So now you're neither part of the UCP or the NDP, but based on what you've been seeing and hearing, what is your advice to the NDP and the UCP?
Well, let's start with Premier Smith and the UCP. Number one, we need a government that spends less so they can tax less. This carbon tax, I mean, the fact that we pay so much carbon tax through our tier one carbon tax, like our fertilizer makers, our potato plants, they pay tons of carbon tax, and then the provincial government just recirculates it into renewables. My goodness, look at how expensive our utility bills have become. Let's truly and legitimately end the carbon tax, and let's make sure that the cost of utilities becomes affordable. Secondly, competition in business. The relationship is too cozy between big business and government. I tried to change some of the lobbying rules about a year ago, so making it so lobbying had to be more transparent, a little more rules around who could lobby and who couldn't. Absolutely. We need to make it so there's less people up there asking for your hard-earned tax dollar. Thirdly, the fair deal. I'm getting a little tired when I see all the premiers get together and yell at the prime minister for more money, and as soon as he gives them a bit more, they all be quiet. It is time to legitimately tell Ottawa we demand a fair deal. And Naveen, the best way I think to do that is we tell Ottawa 3 years from now, we're going to have an independence referendum. Ottawa, you've got 3 years to give us a fair deal, and we'll let Albertans decide if the deal is fair or not. And also speak the truth and speak in a truthful way. As an example, this net zero discussion that the Premier and the Prime Minister are having right now is so wrong. The UCP government's making it look like they're talking like they're against the net zero, but in reality, when you dig into it, Trudeau and the federal Liberals are saying net zero by 2035. The UCP is saying net zero by 2050. Either one will cost the people of Alberta 200,000 jobs, billions of dollars of value and prosperity and net worth. Let's call net zero what it is. It is a way to make us all poor without truly helping raise the standard of living for all people in the world. And let's start to call the truth, and let's work on that. And again, it's back to effectiveness. I'm so honored and so grateful to have represented Cypress Medicine Hat and Albertans for 11 years. But at the end of the day, the mission's not complete, and I'm looking for effectiveness.
Well, you certainly sound busy, even though you don't have a seat in Edmonton. So, Drew, do you have a website or a way for people watching to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to connect with me would give me a text, give me a phone call at 403-581-1443. I'd love to hear. Twitter, Facebook, and you're going to start to see some political action stuff come out when we're fully registered, and some foundation stuff. And we're going to keep moving forward. But I'm easy to find, so thank you.
Well, we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. But Drew, that's all the time we have for today. But thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for Bridge City News.
That was Drew Barnes. He joined us from his office in Medicine Hat. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.